All right, it is 7 o'clock. We are going to get started. Hello, Miss Marilli. I hope you have had a wonderful week so far. It is hump day, and I guess we're just going to go into the rest of our week and we're going to do some questions today. Yay! Now, we're going to get right into it because, unless there's anything in particular you wanted to cover or if you have a particular question, yeah, I think we're it. We do this all the time. So let's go. Now, just in case you're watching someplace else, if this is being recorded, well, this is being recorded and you're watching this later. These are the questions that we started last month. It's a set of 200 questions covering all the general topics. They happen to be in order, and we're doing agency right now. We're doing agency. So let's see what we got. Number 66. The fiduciary duty requiring an agent to apply the knowledge, skill, and competence expected of a real estate professional when representing a client is the duty of A, confidentiality, B, loyalty, C, obedience, or D, reasonable care and skill. Let's see. What do we know? Hello, Miss Juana. How are you? So we're looking at the ability to apply the knowledge. I feel like they went off easy on this one. The knowledge, skill, and competence expected of a real estate professional. I mean, I'm not even going to pretend like y'all don't know this one. Of course, it's reasonable care and skill. This one, when you see questions like this, don't panic. This is a gimme question. There's no tricks. There's no, oh, they're trying to. This is something you may not, I mean, this one's pretty obvious, but it could be just something you wouldn't have known if you hadn't studied. It's a pretty basic fact, and they're just making sure you know what you know. So let's roll on to the next one. Number 67. Under a traditional sub-agency arrangement, a cooperating broker who shows a seller's listed property to a buyer owes fiduciary duties to whom? Under a traditional sub-agency arrangement, a cooperating broker who shows a seller's listed property to a buyer owes fiduciary duties to A, neither party, because subagents owe no fiduciary duties to anyone. B, both the buyer and the seller equally, as in dual agency. C, the seller, even though the cooperating broker is working directly with the buyer. Or D, the buyer, because the cooperating broker is working most closely with the buyer. Hmm. Well, hopefully, we know we can eliminate uh, B. Both the buyer and seller equally as in dual agency. No, it's not dual agency. It says it's sub agency. So it does not work like dual agency. We know in dual agency, we would have one broker or one company representing both the buyer and the seller, and we they owe both sides, the buyer side and the seller side, loyalty, loads, obedience, accounting, all of those things. That's not what we got going on here. But it does say traditional sub agency. Now hopefully we know that it's not going to be A, neither party, because subagents owe no fiduciary duties to anyone. Well, by definition, a subagent is the agent of an agent. It's like agency under agency. So, someplace there has to be agency. And if you're an agent to somebody who owes fiduciary duties, then you owe fiduciary duties. So, it's not A. So now we've gotten it down to C or D. Which one is it? Well, our answer is C. The seller, even though the cooperating broker is working directly with the buyer. Why? Because this seller hired a broker. And let's say they're a broker with ABC. Now, here comes another company, let's say XYZ, and they're saying, hey, we want to hitch a ride here. We want to hitch a ride with you. We want to be underneath you. So if you are representing the seller, then we are representing the seller. That is sub-agency. Now, not every state practices sub-agency. So if your state doesn't, that's one thing. And also, remember there's sub-agency when we're talking about how that second broker XYZ relates to the buyer or the seller. And then we can talk about the relationship between a broker and the individual agent. I can spell. So we know that, okay, generally what's going to happen is the seller hires a broker and then you become a broker of that. You become an agent of that broker. That's sub-agency. So a little tricky, but hopefully there we go. Stacy, you can't hear anything. You're overthinking, really? Okay, you're overthinking. Don't. You know that you know this stuff. Don't try to overthink it too much, right? But let me know where you were getting caught up and we'll talk about it and we'll talk about why and how we could eliminate what you thought might have been the answer. Okay, 68. In a properly disclosed and consented to dual agency, starting off on a good foot. The agent's ability to fulfill duties such as undivided loyalty and full advocacy is necessarily so in a properly disclosed and consented to dual agency. The agent's ability to fulfill duties such as undivided loyalty and full advocacy. So we know we've got dual agency, which you owe loyalty and full advocacy to both parties. Well, what does this mean? Is it A, that do those duties are unaffected because dual agents owe full, unrestricted fiduciary duties to both parties simultaneously? B, transferred entirely to a separate, uninvolved broker. Okay, we can go ahead and eliminate that. I think you know that's not the one. C, limited because the agent cannot fully advocate for one party's interest over the others. Or D, eliminated entirely because dual agents owe no duties to either party. Hmm. Hmm. Well, we eliminated B. Is there any other one? Well, I think we know it's not going to be unaffected. I think we all know that if you're in dual agency, it's not unaffected. Now, I see, Marilla, you're saying that it might be that. Well, here's the thing. If you give unrestricted fiduciary duties to both parties, then you would have to show loyalty to both parties. And how do you do that? Hello, Miss Caroline. How do you do that? So when the buyer says, what do you think I should offer for this house? The loyalty that you owe to the buyer says you should, we should get you the lowest price possible. But then if the seller says, what do you think I should take for this house? Then your loyalty should be more towards, I think you should get, the highest price possible for this house. Let's push it. Let's get every penny we can. And that would be a conflict. That's okay. It's okay. We've now eliminated A and B. And what we know, it's not eliminated entirely because if you don't owe duties to either party, that's usually going to be in the states that have transaction broker. And I'm not going to say no duties because, you still have to share material facts, which makes our answer C, limited, because the agent cannot fully advocate for one party's interest over the others. Yeah. Is it specific? Yes. But it's a good question. It's a good answer, and I like it. All right, 69. I feel like I missed out on the opportunity when we were on number 67 to say 6, 7. Are kids even saying that anymore? I hope to God they're not, because if I was a teacher, I would have killed somebody. Uh, yes, but I feel like I missed out on the opportunity to be old and cringy, so I just said it then. All right, 69. Now, I'm Gen X, so I'm like giggle, giggle, 69. If you know, you know. A brokerage represents both the buyer and the seller in a transaction. Oh, right. I can go no further and be like, that's a dual agency. A brokerage is representing both the buyer and the seller. But the managing broker assigns one affiliated licensee to represent the seller exclusively and a different affiliated licensee to represent the buyer exclusively. This arrangement is known as A, dual agency, B, designated agency, C, sub-agency, or D, single agency for the entire firm. Hmm. All right. Oh, you missed us, Caroline. We always miss you being here. And now that you're feeling better, we can maybe on Sunday, if you like, we can go over some how do I navigate this whole new real estate thing. So we can do that as well. So, all right, Miss Valerie, you said B, designated agency. And you know what? I love that answer because it's the right answer. This managing broker affiliated, assigned one person to one of the parties and assigned another affiliated broker to agent to the other party. That is the definition of designated agency. All right. So on Sunday, Caroline, you said that would be great. On Sunday, we will go over some new agent stuff. And even if you all have not yet passed your exam, I know you are going to eventually. And that means we're going to do, and you all will have what you need to be able to ask the questions that you need to ask your brokers. And, how do you start even, what do you even start to think about when setting up your business? So we will do that on Sunday. All right, 70. A broker without prior authorization accepts an offer on behalf of a seller. The seller later learns of this and signs the purchase agreement, accepting its terms. This illustrates agency created by what? Right. So, broker without prior authorization accepts an offer on behalf of a seller. The seller later learns and then signs the purchase agreement, accepting its terms. So the broker said, "Yeah, that sounds good. My seller will take it." Seller didn't know, and then the seller said, "Oh yeah, yep. This agent was right. I wanted to take it." Is this express agreement, estoppel, ratification, or implication from prior dealings? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to eliminate implication from prior dealings. What prior dealings wasn't even part of the story. Where prior dealings come from? I don't think so. So is it an express agreement, estoppel, ratification? Well, let's see. What do we know? The definition of an express agreement is when you have the parties that put into writing, right? They put into writing, hey, this is going to XYZ is going to happen and ABC is going to happen. And we're both agreeing in writing, this is what's going to happen. Okay, yay. Or you could talk about it. So you're being express about the details, which, yeah, if a seller signed a contract, then it was expressly stated whatever the buyer offered and the seller's expressly, agreeing to it. So that's not wrong, but I wonder if it's the best answer. So we're not going to eliminate A, we're just going to think about it. B, we have estoppel. And remember, estoppel, it has to do with agency created by, the easiest way to think of it is agency created by a mistake. It's when somebody tells, got person A, tells person B, hey, I, a wise agent. So now B deals with things thinking A is wise agent, and really that's not true. And now you've created a state agency because of a mistake or something that was said previously. It's a good try, but no, that's not it. 70 is not estoppel. We also know there's estoppel certificates, but that's not what we're talking about here either. Our answer is going to be by process of elimination, C, which is cool. C is the right answer. C is ratification. And the other thing is, I know that's the definition of ratification. You might have heard like in a movie or something, oh, you need to ratify this contract or you need to ratify this law. It means to confirm. It means to confirm is a good way to put it. So if they're confirming that this law or this rule is going to be in place, in this case, the broker accepted on behalf of the buyer, and then the seller came out and said, "No, I'm going to confirm that, yeah, what that seller said, what that the broker said, that's cool." The brokers response was ratified by the seller. So that's a really good. This is the kind of question I don't think everybody would get. But it's one of those where if you get it on the test, knowing the definition makes all the difference in the world. Also, hopefully maybe you could get it down between A and C. And if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. What I don't want to happen is you're like, oh my God, I don't know what ratification is. I never learned the difference. Well, I know you all have now. And then you panic. You take a guess, you take your best guess, your best educated guess, and you keep on rolling. So yes, C, ratification. All right, 71. A property owner repeatedly allows a particular individual to negotiate on the owner's behalf in front of buyers without objection. A buyer reasonably relies on the individual's apparent authority to negotiate. If a dispute later arises, the owner may be prevented from denying the agency relationship under the doctrine of A, agency by ratification. Well, that's not gonna, I mean, it sounds like it would be a good answer, but it's not. Ratification means we're confirming, oh, yeah, this is good, right? And this story is saying the owner may be prevented from denying the agency relationship. This is not the seller going through and being like, oh my gosh, yeah, what this person said, it works for me. This is somebody who's saying, no, I'm trying to deny that there's any agency relationship here. So, by definition, from what we just talked about, it's not agency by ratification. All right, B, we've got the implied agency by necessity. Agency by necessity is not a thing, right? I guess it could possibly be a thing. I'm not an attorney, but it's not something we teach in real estate school. Agency out of necessity. Like, I'm taking a wild guess here, but I guess if you're on a TV show and somebody is in a coma or about to die and there's nobody, no family member or anybody there, then I do know that doctors can make decisions on behalf of that person, be their agency. I mean, maybe that's agency by necessity, but it's not something we deal with this in class, so I'm going to say it's a no. Then we have agency by estoppel and express agency. Well, lucky for us, I just talked about estoppel. Agency of estoppel is when somebody says XYZ and a third party relies on that XYZ. So now it stops somebody from being like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. And receiving in the counter, it wasn't me. I love that song. Anyway, what is it like if you're not like have songs in your head all the time? I don't know. So it's not express agency. Our agent's answer is C, agency by estoppel. Again, and I know this is a dead horse that I keep beating. If you just did a practice exam and you found out the answer to 70 was C, ratification, and you didn't go through and study what is estoppel, then later on, if you had a question like 71, you might get it wrong. But if you use all of your resources, you'll be good. And don't think I don't see you, Miss Caroline. Don't think I don't see what you're giving us.
I like carrots, and you should too. It goes crunch, 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 and it's good for you.
We like carrots.
And you should too. It goes
crunch, crunch, crunch. We hadn't played that in a while. Hopefully my volume was shared so that you all could hear the carrot song. It says it was, but yes, we love it. I love it too, Miss Stacy. I love it too. All right, let's roll on to number 72. A buyer works with the seller's agent during a showing, but has no agency representationship. That doesn't even click. The word is relationship. Where I got representationship is boring is what having no songs in my head would be. You're absolutely right. Where did I get representationship? But I kind of like it. I wonder how that would be spelled. Representation. I feel like that's what you would have with a buyer before they officially signed and said, yes, You could be my buyer's agent. If you're in a state that allows like oral agency and you're not a realtor, I feel like you're in a representationship. It's like it's complicated. Am I representing you as a buyer? Am I not? I mean, this is like a representationship or I'm trying to figure this out. But having said all that, a buyer works with the seller's agent during a showing, but has no agency relationship of their own. They're in a representationship with an agent. In agency terminology, this buyer is best described as the agent's A, customer, B, client, C, subagent, or D, principal. So let's draw it out. So you got a buyer and their work, and you're going to have a seller. So you got a buyer side and a seller side. This buyer is working with a seller's agent. So let's say seller's agent is on the seller side, and this buyer is working with this seller's agent. They have no agency relationship of their own. So what does that mean? What does that mean for this buyer? Well, we know it's not their client. They're not the client. We know that. And we know since there's no agency relationship, it's not their principal because principal and client mean exactly, as far as we're concerned, the same thing. The question becomes, is it the customer or are you working as a sub-agent? Oof. Well, a sub-agent would have to say there's an agent of an agent. And that's not what it's saying. It's saying the seller's agent, this person directly is working with the buyer. So remember, if you're the seller's agent, one person is your client and the other person is your customer, making your answer A. Remember, you work for your client, you work with a customer. And that's what 72 was giving us. All right. 70. Oh, nice job, ladies. Hey, Tricks. I just looked up and saw that. Hello. 73. Let me grab some water. Also, completely random because, hello, you all have met me. I tried for the very first time. I had no idea what I was going to cook. So I gave ChatGPT the contents of my fridge that I wanted to use, and I was like, come up with a recipe. Um, ChatGPT did me solid. He decided, and I call him a he, of course, Uncle Ray gave me a recipe for these meatballs with these different flavors, and I was like, okay, sure, never thought about doing that, but it was good. So if you all are not using AI, I mean, if we're gonna ruin this world, at least I can go out with a good meal. So just try it. If you haven't already, tell AI what you got in your fridge, what you got in your pantry, and it will come up with a recipe. Boom. Okay, 73. Now that I've given you your trick for the day, a listing agent learns of a significant, non-obvious structural defect. Oh, hopefully in your mind, you're like, structural defect. That is a structural defect. I don't care what you know, but you better know that that is a material fact. We haven't even gotten into the question, and we know there's a material fact. And while you're reading, you can be like, oh, it's a material fact. I already know this is going to have to be shared with everybody. It's a material fact. Think of material facts as like the COVID of the real estate world. It just has to be shared with everybody, unfortunately. Oh, it's kind of like the glitter of the real estate world. It's got to get everywhere. It's got to be shared everywhere. You can't get rid of it. Just saying. So, a listing agent learns a significant non-obvious structural defect in the property that the seller has not disclosed. Regardless of which party the agent represents, the agent generally has a duty to. And okay, you all are blowing up my chat over in the Zoom room, and you're telling me that the answer is
C is for cookie. That's good enough for me.
you all are telling me that it is C. It is that we should disclose the known material defect to all parties to a transaction. Duh. That's our answer. I don't even care what the other ones say. Remain silent. We're going to do it anyway. Can't remain silent. You can't disclose only to the seller or to the defect only to the buyer. C has most definitely got to be our right answer. All right, 74. Which of the following would automatically terminate an agency relationship by operation of law, even if the listings agreement stated term has not yet expired? Ah, do you all remember on Sunday we went over contract stuff? And one of the slides that I had, let's see if I can pull it up. I said this is probably one of the most important slides I have. And let's see if I can find my slides from Sunday. Here it is. And let me scroll. These are all our notes from Sunday. And I know it's this one. Do you remember this? And let me clear it for you, because I know it's going to come up. You're going to need to know the difference between what terminates agency contracts, what terminates sales contracts, and what terminates offers. And we see, since it's an agency contract, death of the client, if the firm or the brokerage loses its license, if a sole proprietor dies, so if it's just, the broker is working by themselves and they, fine, whatever. Expiration, contract fulfillment, destruction of the property, listings. So death does terminate an agency contract. We want to be able to kind of understand that we know these things. Not that you have to memorize the list, but it should be recognizable when you're trying to figure it out. So since we know we have this sheet, I told you how this comes in handy. This is one of the most important slides. Now we can look at our answer choices. Boom. So which of the following would automatically, keyword, terminate an agency relationship by operation of law? The law says this agency relationship is over, even if the term has not yet expired. Death of the principal or the seller, a temporary downturn in the local real estate market, the agent taking a 2-week vacation. That's not the right answer, because we don't take vacations as agents. We just, keep doing what people want us to do. Or the buyer submitting a lower than expected offer. You already know the right answer. It is A, death of the principal or the seller. We know death will terminate an agency agreement of the principal, death of the principal. Death will terminate a offer. If the buyer, dies before an offer is accepted, or if a seller dies before they're, you notify the buyer of its acceptance, it's still an offer. Death will terminate an offer. Nice. Okay. 75. A salesperson, while acting within the scope of duties for the sponsoring broker, makes a misrepresentation to a buyer during a transaction. Under agency law principles, the broker may be A, liable only if the buyer was a represented client rather than an unrepresented customer. Okay, this person made a misrepresentation to the buyer. So they liable only if the buyer was a represented client rather than an unrepresented customer. B, liable only if the broker personally witnessed the misrepresentation as it occurred. C, held vicariously liable for the salesperson conduct because it occurred within the scope of the agency relationship. Or D, automatically shielded from any liability because only the individual salesperson can be held responsible. So we got a salesperson acting under their broker. The salesperson lies, and this question is asking how responsible is that sponsoring broker? Now, whatever you may call it in your state, when you get your sponsoring broker, when you find your principal broker, well, they're responsible for you, and that's going to make our answer C, held vicariously liable for the salesperson's conduct because it occurred within the scope of the agency relationship. Hey, sponsoring broker, you should have been watching your agent more closely. You should have been sometimes there's nothing you can do if people aren't going to follow the rules, but that's why you get paid the big bucks, sponsoring broker. You're responsible. You get paid when I do well, but you also take a lot of the heat when I mess up. All right. 76. An agency relationship that arises from the conduct and actions of the party, rather than from a signed agreement explicitly creating it is best described as, ooh, this is one of the first words we talked about on Sunday. An agency relationship that arises from the conduct and the actions of the parties rather than from a signed agreement explicitly creating it is best described as subagency, a general agency, an implied agency, or an express agency. All right. Anybody got a guess? Hmm? What are you thinking? It arises from the conduct and actions of the party rather than a signed agreement or verbal, throwing it out there verbally. You're making a contract from the actions. Whatever could this be? All right, 76. You all are telling me it's C, it's C, it's C. And once again, you all are correct. That's implication, implied agency. Agency that is created because of the conducts and actions. Remember, we talked about I guess we were talking about contract law, but remember in contract law we talked about express or implied contracts. Well, that agency relationship could be expressly created, it could be implied, it could be because, you know, estoppel or ratification. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are going on there. So, we're good. All right, 77. An agent represents only the buyer in the transaction, single agency, owing full fiduciary duties exclusively to that buyer and none to the seller. This describes an extra point on the test. We should be getting this right, right? So an agent represents only the buyer in the transaction. So we don't owe dual agency. You're not a sub agent because you are an agent of the buyer, right? And of course, you're a broker. Is it designated agency or single agency? Well, the the broker didn't say, "Hey, you're representing this person, you're representing the other person." That's designated agency. By definition, our answer has to be A. Single agency as a buyer's agent. You are working for that buyer and nobody else. All right, 78. Grab some more water. I do so much talking. In some jurisdictions, a licensee may help both the buyer and the seller complete a transaction without acting as a fiduciary for either party, instead, performing only basic statutory duties such as honesty and proper accounting. The non agency role is generally known as A, a subagent, B, a dual agent, C, a designated agent, or D, a transaction broker or facilitator. What say you? What are we thinking? All right. Valerie, you told me it's D. You gave me, oh, Valerie, I appreciate you for D's nuts. Stacy, you said B. Caroline, you said B. So we're down between D and B. Right? Now, this is a tricky question, but we have to read it all the way through. A licensee may help both the buyer and the seller. Well, that right there screams dual agency. But it says without acting as fiduciary for either party. Well, in dual agency, you've got to be representing both parties. And in this question, it says you're not acting as a fiduciary for either party. What? It was tricky. Yes, they're like, they tried to get you and go, oh, let me just read the first part of this question. No, it sounds like dual agency until you get to this part about without acting as a fiduciary for either party, taking us to D, broker, transaction broker, otherwise known as a facilitator, in states where it's available. Boom. It's so easy, y'all. It's so easy to get lost in the sauce. So easy. But you got this. The more we do this, the more you'll catch on and you all get better. You all, I mean, I can see the growth with each of you all. It's just a matter of, oh, you can't trick me here. I've seen questions like this. All right, 79. A broker is hired to market and find a buyer for a single specific property, but has no authority to sign the sales contract, a contract of sale on the owner's behalf. This broker is best classified with respect to the owner as a subagent, a general agent, a special agent, or a universal agent. So the broker can market to find a buyer for a specific property, but has no authority to sign a sales contract. Is that a subagent? Well, no, we know subagent is the agent of an agent. We've only got just one. General agent, we know it's not general agent because if you're a general agent, you would have power of attorney. Special agent or universal agent. Oof, what are we thinking? All right, you all are saying C, 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 C. Like we can't trick you all. Yes, you all already know. My name is Bond, James Bond. Couldn't think of his name for a second. Really, you said, is this a property manager? So we're gonna assume no. And why is because you've been hired to find a buyer, not a tenant. So we're going to go ahead and assume this is not property management. Okay. And that makes our answer, like you all said, C, special agency. It's okay, really. I'm telling you all, the devil is in the details with these. The devil is truly in the details with these. So it's easy to get one word messed up and changes everything. All right, 80. Before an agent may act as a dual agent representing both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction, the agent must A, obtain verbal approval only from whichever party signed the agreement first, B, notify the local listing licensing authority and wait for written approval before proceeding. Well, we know that's not the answer because you'd be waiting around forever. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Beep, beep. C, obtain the informed voluntary consent of both parties, typically in writing. I like that one. Or D, wait until after the purchase agreement is signed to disclose the dual role. No, we're not waiting that. So do you need verbal approval only from one of the parties, or do you need to obtain informed voluntary consent from both parties? And you already know our answer is, of course, C. Helps if I get it there. Boom. Nice. Nice, ladies. All right, 81. Which of the following is one of the essential elements required for a contract to be legally valid? We've moved out of agency and moving on to contracts. Which of the following is one of the essential elements required for a contract to be legally valid? Well, we talked about this in the contract review. We know we need MCLL, mutual agreement, consideration, legal capacity, lawful objective. So we'll see one of these. Mutual consent. Okay, that sounds good. Approval and signature of a real estate broker. Nope, you're not part of the deal. Recording of the contract. Nope, you don't have to record. Notarization by a licensed notary public. Nope, you don't have to notarize. Now, I'm saying you don't have to. Of course, every state is a little bit different. But as a general rule, this is going to work. It's going to work. So our answer is A. I like to eat apples and apricots. I like to eat. Oh, what are those shaky things? I was going to call it a mariachi, but that's the name of the band. What do you call those shaky things? And oh, you all know what I'm calling. They kind of look like a turkey leg, and they got the beads inside, and that's going to stick with me all day until I can figure it out. It's those things. It's a noisemaker. Oh my God. You forgot the name too, Stacy? What's it called?
Moroccan something.
Maracas. Thank you, maracas. Thank you. I need a set of maracas. I've been given little ones, like when you go to a Mexican restaurant and then the mariachi band is there. But every time my friends are like, give up the maracas, we are going to shove them down your throat. But now I think I'm adult enough to handle a set of maracas. Need some maracas. Let's not lie to myself. I'm not adult enough for the maracas, but I'm still gonna get some. All right. Our answer is A, a mutual consent expressed through a valid offer and acceptance. Mutual agreement, consideration, legal capacity, lawful objective. Boom. 82. Now I really want some maracas. I'm sure somebody's got some for sale on Facebook. Somebody, some person who hates somebody else gave their child a set of maracas. And they're like, I hate you. That's going to be perfect for me. I don't need new maracas. I need used maracas. They're still going to make noise. And I can get on my mother's nerves. Amazon, you have a pair? Oh, see, I feel like if I spend Amazon money, eventually my mother's going to throw them at me and try to kill me because I'm going to take them with me someplace I'm not supposed to. So I'm gonna leave, not too much money on the table. Okay. Oh my gosh. Harassing. Is it just me no matter how old I get? Harassing my mother is still fun. Cannot wait. A real estate purchase contract is signed by a buyer who is a minor. Boom, boom, boom. And let's add this. The contract is best described. Let's go with these as national. We got a national answer, and then we'll have the California answer, right? So our answer choices are A, unenforceable solely because of the statute of frauds. B, void from the outset and unenforceable by either party. C, voidable at the option of the minor. Or D, fully valid and enforceable against the minor exactly as written. All right, Marilli, you said it is void in Cali. California love. Why is my brain just on all sorts of songs tonight? But yes, in California, it would be void because it is with a minor. Absolutely. But for those of us that are not in California, we know our answer would be C, voidable at the option of the minor. Could there be other states where it could be true that is void? It very well could be. I don't know of them. But for most other states, it would be voidable at the option of the minor. If you sign a lease where you let some minor, rent from you, if you want to change your mind, that's going to suck. But if the minor wants to void that contract, well, then yeah, they can. Then they can. It would be voidable. Of course, that's not in California. All right, 83. Under the statute of frauds, which of the following types of real estate agreements generally must be in writing to be enforceable? A, a month-to-month oral residential lease. B, a verbal agreement between neighbors about routine fence maintenance. C, a contract for the sale of real property. Or D, an oral agreement to show a property to a prospective buyer. Didn't I say on Sunday that you were going to be tested on this whole thing, enforceable, valid, unenforceable? You already know this. Right? And we already know, we also talked about you were going to need to know the statute of frauds versus the statute of limitations, because if you know all that, our answer is C, a contract for the sale of real property. Boom. I like it when a plan comes together. All right, 84, because I see y'all got that right. Oh, you know what? Just for everybody getting that right, you get a...
I like carrots, and you should too. It goes crunch, 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 and it's good for you.
We like carrots.
And you should too. It goes
Crunch, crunch, crunch. All right, 84. A seller receives a buyer's written offer of $250,000 and responds with a written counteroffer of $260,000. What is the legal effect of this counteroffer on the buyer's original $250,000 offer? Rewind. Let's read that again. A seller receives a buyer's written offer of $250,000. Okay, so far so good. And responds with a written counteroffer. Uh-oh, it's that counteroffer word. That is the counteroffer word. I know I have someplace in my things that goes dun dun dun, and I wish I knew where it was, because this is one of those times where dun dun dun, that key word there, counter offer. Oh, here it is. You saw the word counteroffer, and that should change everything. We know a counteroffer is a permanent rejection of the original offer plus a new offer. And if we know that, is our answer A, it terminates the original offer, which the buyer can no longer accept. B, it leaves the original offer open while giving the buyer an alternative to consider. C, it has no legal effect until the buyer formally responds to it. Or D, it automatically creates a binding contract of 255,000, the midpoint between the two figures. Well, we know absolutely it's not D. And we know it's not C, it has no legal effect. There is a counter offer, and that means it permanently revoked the original offer. It does not leave the original offer open. Our answer is A, it terminates the original offer, which the buyer can no longer accept. I just feel like that key word, counteroffer, made all the difference in that. Nice. 85. A purchase agreement includes a financing contingency conditioning. Okay, it helps if I, get this read in the right tone. A purchase agreement includes a financing condition. What is wrong with me? Pull it together, Candace. A purchase agreement includes a financing contingency, conditioning the contract on the buyer of obtaining loan approval within 30 days. If the buyer cannot obtain financing within that period and properly notifies the seller, the buyer is generally entitled to. Wow, that was a lot. So we have a financing contingency, and that makes the contract be conditioned on the buyer getting approval of the loan within 30 days. Well, the whole point of a contingency, whether it's a financing one or any contingency, it's an escape clause. When there is a contingency, there is an escape clause. And that means it's going to save you from being in breach, from basically. So is it A, be required to complete the purchase with cash instead of financing? You're gonna force me to pay cash for you? You gonna rob a bank for me? Where am I gonna get cash from? Nice try. It's not A. B, cancel the contract and have the earnest money deposit returned. Ooh, that's sounding promising. C, have the closing date extended automatically without the seller's consent. Nope, that's not a thing. Or D, forfeit the earnest money deposit to the seller as liquidated damages. Well, this would be what happens when somebody breaches. You can't buy the house and you said you would, and there was no contingency. The whole point of adding the contingency is that if the buyer walks away, then they're not going to lose money. And I see you, Val. I'm bringing home a baby, a bumblebee. Won't my mama be so proud of me? I see you. Bees in the trap, bees in the trap, with bees in the trap, bees in the trap. I love it. One day when I win the lottery, I can bring all of you all up to Michigan in the summer when it's warm, and we can go karaoke. And we'll be the only ones knowing these little songs, but we can all sing them together. So we know our answer is B, cancel the contract and have the earnest money deposit returned. That's why we put a contingency in there. Because it bees in the trap. Bees in the trap. All right, 86. A purchase contract specifies that if the buyer breaches without legal justification, the seller's sole remedy will be to retain the buyer's earnest money deposit as liquidated damages. Yeah, that's generally what earnest monies are for. For such a clause to be enforceable, the amount specified should generally be A, as large as possible to strongly deter the buyer from breaching. B, a reasonable estimate of the seller's probable damages, not a punitive amount. C, equal to the full purchase price of the property. Or D, left undetermined in the contract and decided later by a court after the breach. No. We're not going to leave it undetermined. It needs to be part of the contract. And the whole point is equal to the full purchase price. Dude, I breached. As long as I give you the amount of money, why do you care? It's not C either. We're down between A and B. Should it be as large as possible to strongly deter the buyer from breaching, or a reasonable estimate of the seller's probable damages, not a punitive amount? Remember, this idea of liquidated damages is very much a legal concept. So we're not trying to say, well, what's best for my client? We're going with, well, this is a legal concept for things beyond real estate. And we're trying to say, when it's liquidated damages, hey, this is the money I get because you breached. I lost something. So, of course, our answer is not A, as large as possible to strongly deter the buyer from breaching. It ain't wrong, but it's not the best answer. The best kind of legal answer is a reasonable estimate of the seller's probable damages, not a punitive amount. You're not supposed to be punishing the buyer for walking away. It's to say, hey, buyer, you caused me a problem when you didn't buy. B. There we go. 87. I see y'all. I see y'all, ladies. I feel like we had two B's in a row. We did. We did. 87. A seller refuses to convey title despite a valid, fully performed purchase contract. That's how tires get slashed. Saying. The buyer asks a court to order the seller to complete the sale exactly as agreed. Rather than seeking monetary damages, this remedy is called, is it A, liquidated damages? No, we just talked about what liquidated damages are. B, specific performance. I'm liking that. C, rescission, or D, novation. Well, we know novation is replacing the parties or a contract from another. So your nova, meaning new. Yeah, that's not what we're doing here. It's not novation. Is it rescission or is it specific performance? Do, 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 do. The answer's B, do, do. Do, 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 do. It's B, specific performance. The judge is forcing you to perform whatever specific activity you promised in that contract. You basically tattle to the judge to make things work. 88. Both parties to a real estate contract agree to cancel the agreement entirely, returning each other to the position they were in before signing. This is called, before I read the answer choices, I said this is like an annulment. Like when you get married, you could have the marriage annulled and it goes back to the original places. This word is like it takes the parties back to where they originally were. So is it an assignment? We know it's not specific performance. We just talked about it. Novation, I just told you that means new, or rescission. And yes, by process of elimination, boom. D, rescission. How much is that doggy in the window? I know I had other D words. Oh, under the sea. I need to come up with another fun D word because I keep getting me when I sing that. I do. All right. D, rescission. 89. With the consent of all parties, a new buyer is substituted for the original buyer in a purchase contract. Ooh, look at that word new. Is substituted for the original buyer in a purchase contract. And the original buyer is completely released from all obligations under this agreement. This is called, we know it's not a novation. Well, we know it's not a rescission, what I meant to say. We know it's not an assumption, and we know it's not an assignment. We saw that word new, and we know it is novation. Bam. Bam, 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 bam. All right, ladies, we have gotten to the top of this next page, and I have timed my dinner to come out right in 3 minutes. So I need to cut us off a little early tonight. But did you notice most of these questions we talked about tonight, we talked about directly on Sunday? And when I asked AI to come up with a set of questions, I said, things that you are most likely to be tested on and at a pretty difficult level. So if these things were, I'm hoping they're taking, yeah. So If these things made sense, great. If some of them didn't, then go ahead, re-watch Sundays. Uh, and I made that into a video. Watch Sundays live, but you can also go to the regular videos. But guys, I will see you on Sunday. We will do more questions and then tell a friend. We're going to go over what you need to know as new agents and setting up your business. So, guys, I will see you on Sunday. Have a good rest of your week. And remember, don't do anything I would do. And if you do it, don't get caught. That's all I'm saying. Just don't get caught. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Candace. Bye, ladies. See you Sunday.
See you Sunday.